yasiise ennyaanya n'akatungulu waba ali laki n'omunnyo. Tetukyalya nnyama, tetukyalya binyeebwa, tulya nnyaanya ze twewoze.
Hello, my dear viewer. Welcome to the show. My name is Mbabazi Anna. I can't forget to say thank you to you for all keeping it locked right here on our show every single time. You've really supported us in the past time, and I really just want to say God bless you so much. I won't take you so much into those details, but I want to inform you that today I have a very important guest in the house. Where we do a mixture of Luzungu and Luganda for all our audience. So for today, I have Dr. Nyanzi Stella, or most of you say Stella Nyanzi. You know the order of the names also matter. So she's a doctor, she's a teacher, she's a politician, she's a mother, she's an activist. I think that's where we all know her from so much. So I want to welcome her so much. Welcome to the show, Madam Nyanzi.
Thank you very much, Anna. I'm delighted to be here. I'm all those things you've said and more.
What more?
I'm many things. I'm a woman. I'm a Ugandan. I'm a member of the opposition. I'm a person who vocalizes issues other people fear to talk about. What else do you want to know?
You say that you vocalize things people fear to say. Where do you get the confidence from?
What is the alternative? I think for me that silence is not an option. Because many people can no longer express themselves freely in Uganda. Our freedom of expression, freedom of speech has been taken away. It's only people who praise the regime who are free to speak. But I think I refuse for even that last freedom to be taken away from me. Many people such as myself who are activists or protesters or non-violent demonstrators can no longer occupy demonstration spaces in Uganda. But I think while all our civil liberties are being taken away from us, it's important for those of us who can to exercise our free speech, which should be non-negotiable. I enjoy it when people say to me, where do you get the confidence? How can I not speak about hunger, my poverty, my lack, my inability to live freely in society? How can I not do that? I think for me that speech is one of the last weapons that we have. And I am using it every day. Every day I wake up and I have a tongue. Buli lwenkera nga nnina olulimi, nga nnina obulamu, nze njogera oba kubotola nga mbotola. Ntyoki? Ku myaka gyange, I'm 46 plus.
For the sake of your family,
Nedda. Bw'oyogera, omusajja yatugamba, yali afande mulamba, bw'oyo gwa ggwanga. Nti bw'oyogera, bakutwala, bw'osirika, bakutwala. N'olwekyo yogera, kubanga tewali kikuwonya. I think that silence does not spare anybody. My family cannot live under the illusion of being safe because they are quiet. People who are silent are targeted. Many of the opposition members who are living in Chitalia never spoke a word. Abasinga tebabawulira naye bajja ne babajjawo beswi. Lwaki? Lwakuba endowooza zaabwe tezikkiriziganya n'endowooza z'abantu abali mu bufuzi. Right? So oba osirise, oba tosirise bakola ki? Bakutwala. N'olwekyo yogera mwana wange. Ebyokutya kuyamba. Fear is an important catalyst. For me, I use it as fuel. Okay? If I am not committing a crime, I am not sinning, I am not violating anyone's rights, and I'm actually expressing myself, using my voice to speak about oppression, speak about corruption, speak about abuses of human rights, these are issues that are important even to my family. I think for me that silence does not save anybody. Silence also allows the perpetrators of evil, of violence, of violation of human rights to go on unstopped.
So has the talking really helped?
For me, it has. You're even inviting me to come and talk to you. That's how important it is. I think that if we are not brave enough to challenge those that abuse Ugandans, there'll be nobody to speak on my behalf. In my case, I'm privileged. I'm a privileged woman. I get access to all these public spaces, which many other people never get access to. And I think I could use my privilege to continue serving those that abuse and oppress Ugandans. But I choose to use my privilege to speak against the oppression of Ugandans. Whether it's a school child at school being abused by a teacher, or it's the stealing of public funds, or it's the misuse of COVID-19 funds, or it is violence against women, okay? And I think that for me, we have a lot of platforms in Uganda which are being used to serve those that don't serve us. And there should be many more people such as myself who use this privilege to speak. I think that there are many people privileged as myself who have failed Ugandans, who have benefited themselves and their families and their businesses. And it costs nothing to speak about the myriad of issues. One doesn't have to speak about a difficult, politicized, dangerous subject. One can speak about bad roads, because they're for all of us, whether one is for the regime in power or not. One can speak about the vaccination process that's happening right now. One can speak about opening of schools and how it's been very difficult and confusing for teachers, for parents, for students, for school owners, even for the government. And that's a subject that need not be political or dangerous, because all of us have children. If we don't have children, we have sisters and brothers who go to school. And the future of our country is shaped in school today. Whether it's P1, I mean, there's no nursery, whether it's nursery or P1 or secondary school, and speaking out about the issues around us, umeme, water, food, loans. People borrow tomatoes and onions from shops, and they fail to pay, and they go back and borrow some more. Loans don't have to be the huge loans we are getting from IMF and the huge trillions of debts that we have. We are suffering at all levels as Ugandans, and I think that we need many more Ugandans to speak out about these issues.
So you have talked about that issue of schools, and we have all realized it's now a public thing right now. Everyone is complaining, shifts. These kids have just gone back, now they are coming back, and yet the tuition remains the same. How do you think that government has handled this issue properly, or it has missing letters?
So, look, as a member of the opposition, one of my biggest points of criticism, negative criticism, hard criticism, uncompromising, unflinching, unedited criticism of the government's failures in Uganda is around the issue of education. Even before COVID-19, there were very many problems with our education system. After COVID-19, hey, Anna, after COVID-19, I'm a parent to 3 children. My twins, Kato and Waswa, were in S1 in March of 2020. I took them out of their S1 class on 26th or 27th March when Yoweri Museveni closed all schools. Unlike very many Ugandans who cannot afford electricity and the internet, I have electricity and I have internet in my house. I'll tell you what, I failed to ensure that my children attended online classes. Why? In the COVID-19 moment, I had about 8 people in my house. Okay? At what moment were they going to do internet classes over 2 computers in the house? At what moment was I going to supervise them? I'm not a teacher for children. I don't know their syllabus. I don't know chemistry. I don't know history for S1, although I studied in S1. One of my children goes to international school. I have never done the international curriculum. So as a parent, what sort of supervision was I going to give my 3 children, in addition to 5 others who were living in my house at the time, because I took in people. I took in children who had parents across the border, and there was nobody to come for them, and they were my children's friends, so they were in my house for the COVID-19 lockdown period. Part of the problem is that during the lockdown, schools lost teachers, right? My father has a community school in Masaka, Kalinga, in our village. It's over 20 years old, right? Many of the teachers in that school, similar to very many other teachers in rural and the peri-urban areas of Uganda, became farmers or boda men or hair salon keepers or even batunda obuntuntu. Kakati omugamba adde yasomese nga boda bwagituulako digi n'afuna bakasitoma afunye ssente, right? Amaze omwaka a whole year nga investize mu ka business k'akakuvuga boda. It doesn't make sense. So teachers have dropped out of the teaching profession to find vocations in the informal sector. Ezikola ssente, much more money. The conditions are favorable. Yeyesalirawo ddi lwabeera ku luguudo, ddi lwavaako, yeyesalirawo omusolo, yeyesalirawo zaafuna, yeyesalirawo basaavisinga bajaaji yo batasaavisinga. Tebiringa bya ssomero, school bell, line, mukole line, abaana mukole line, ne baticha bakola line ng'ente, right? And so I think that that is not a small problem, because COVID-19 demands that we social distance in class. Now, to social distance means you need more teachers to cater for the socially distanced classes that you have built. Were these classes built during COVID-19 lockdown? No. Okay? Suddenly, we need more teachers, we need more classes so that we can be healthy at school. Teachers have left. Classes were not built. Those that are existent, some have already become shops, some have become offices and bureaus, and so the investment in education, particularly by the government, maybe government schools were retained, but a lot of private schools, which were catering to the gap, were closed, unfortunately. The shift or staggered resumption of school has been very unfortunate because, first of all, there are children who never missed classes. They went on with their online classes. Yoweri Museveni promised us radios and TVs for our children's education. Did your children get radio? Did they get TV? Okay, were they doing online classes? And so there's a class of people who are already doing online classes. They never stopped. Parents were paying 1 million plus per term for online classes. Their children were doing tests, and many of them were promoted because parents rightly said, I paid over 4 million shillings during the lockdown for my child to study. The teachers were teaching. We were doing internet subscription data. You were paying for electricity. They did their training. Why should my child repeat? Other parents, such as myself, are like, there is no way. I could not afford food. I could not afford water and electricity. How was I going to afford internet or whatever it is, right? And so my children did not study, and I do not want them to be promoted. In fact, I would like them to repeat so that they study S1. They study that year and complete the syllabus. Now there are schools where everybody who was in S1 last year has to be in S2. And I'm like, how do you put children who've been studying for a year online with mine who haven't been studying online? My children will come last in class not because they're stupid, but because they haven't been studying. How are exams and assessment going to be done across classes, whether it's S4 or S6 or whatever, among children who've been studying and those who haven't? And it's not a problem of the teachers or the parents. It's a structural problem, right? I returned my children to school. Some were really affected by having to repeat. I made all of them repeat their classes. Having to repeat, yet their friends have been promoted. Some parents are like, hey, promotion, it means I lose 1 year of school fees. Very good. It's cost of effective. Okay? Yeah. But now the problem is that for parents such as myself who are like, repeat your class because you missed the year. S1 material is important. S3 is important. The P5 stuff you missed is important. You can't just be promoted. we appear like we are bad parents because we are forcing our children to repeat. But actually, it's not repeating. It is getting that which you missed because they didn't study. One of the biggest problems for me has been the testing that's being done at school. In my children's school, they go to an international school. All the kids have to pay $15 for a test every 2 weeks. And these are children who are day scholars. So my children were boarders initially. Because of the need for social distancing in boarding dormitories, international students from abroad were given beds, and local students were told to come from home. Now the problem is that many of us take our children to schools far away from where we live, and that is why we put them in boarding school, right? 2 hours on the road, one way, on a non-traffic jam day. On a good day, the distance between my home and my children's school is 2 hours. Class begins at 7:30. This means we have to be on the road at 5:30, which means we have to wake up at 5. Okay? But coming back from school to home is another 2 hours. When do my children sleep? And so I think in terms of thinking through the policies that the government has given about boarding and social distance and all of this, not enough critical thought has been put into how our schools are being restructured. Okay? And the option is take your child out of my school and take them to the school close home. Actually, no. I chose that international school because I want those particular children who go there to undergo the Cambridge curriculum. Yeah, the syllabus. There are problems with our syllabus already. I understand there had been a revised syllabus before COVID-19. Okay? Who knows how it has been revised again for it to cater for the COVID-19 lapse in teaching? We know nothing. Okay? And so I think that one of our biggest problems is that at the ministry level, where policy is given, there are a lot of problems introduced between the conflict of technocrats who are appointed because they have the qualifications and skills they bring, and political appointees, many who are appointed because of nepotism, because she's a wife to the president, because etc, etc. Political appointees who do not have the qualifications to plan and give policy guidelines about education and the education sector, especially in this moment of COVID-19. How do they guide technocrats? What do technocrats do that is, how do they suggest or propose critical revisions to the syllabus if it is not in agreement with what the political appointees would want to hear? Because there are issues around rebuilding, just building more classes.
So as an educationist, what do you feel is missing and what should be done?
Everything is wrong in the education sector right now. Everything is wrong. It's a sham. Previously, young people in UPE and some USC schools were studying under trees. Right? Perhaps we should go back to the tree model, because our children can study under the trees and have space. But in order to do that, a teacher will need vocal abilities that are not natural. Okay? Do we have electricity to allow this massive sort of arrangements in tents? Do we? Okay? So I think for me that structurally, policy-wise, programmatically, there is no capacity to even monitor what's going on. I heard about an RDC in Barara who went to schools and he found nursery school people in class and he arrested the headmaster who tried to give him a bribe. Right? Suspension of nursery school. What does it mean? University, e-learning in universities where even the internet for adults working in the corporate class is a problem. What about e-learning for people living in Katanga and the outskirts, the slums around Makerere University or any other university? Because all universities have a little slum around them. Nkumba, it's Baita Babidi. KIU, I don't know. And so, what is missing? We need a total overhaul of the regime sectors. Of course. Change is coming, change is coming, change is coming. We need a revolution that will listen. And I'm not making this up. The problems of Uganda begin with the head of Uganda. Okay? For Museveni, his children and his grandchildren have E-classes. I'm talking about the Cambridge system of school. Perhaps that's what they have, the international syllabus, and they go to international schools, and our problems are not their problems. We are struggling for school fees. In S1 last year, the term I paid for school fees that was never taught, never returned to me. Now I have to pay some more. Okay? No one is thinking, hey, parents actually had paid money in January, February. Okay? Yes. Our kids went to school for about a week, 4 weeks, and then school was closed. We had balance. Balance is a fete. Bazogerako batugamba bugambi muongere fees. Omwana bwataja ne sleep, bank sleep ejjudde tajja kuyingira, right? People are still struggling. Like I said to you, abantu beewola ennyaanya ku mudaala gwa bbeere ddene. Si lwakuba beejalabya. Ennyaanya zenva yasiise ennyaanya n'akatungulu waba ali laki n'omunnyo. Tetukyalya nnyama, tetukyalya binyeebwa, tulya nnyaanya ze twewoze. Kakati fiizi z'omwana ngenda zifuna ntya? Ate n'amasomero toganenya. Gabadde tegakola. Many schools were not operational. So they need this tuition to help them function. What is the problem? The problem is a governance issue. It is true, COVID-19 is global. COVID-19 did not hit only Uganda. But what have other countries done? Right? What is the infrastructure position of our schools? What is the retention of teachers? Like, why are teachers leaving the teaching profession and joining other professions? Even in the informal sector, where you don't need a lot of capital to enter. And the future is not certain. Future ya boda boda teli ajimanyi. Future y'omusomesa jeri ali certain paka retirement. But why are people choosing these more risky versions of occupation and employment and income earning than teaching, which is a solid profession? So what I think we need to do is to first get rid of the dictatorship. And then the problems of Uganda will be solved. I don't think that we can do much under the current leadership. It's a pity. I'm not very optimistic. I don't have so much hope about the current leadership. What is Janet Museveni going to do about education that she has not done? Right? What? And so for me, I think that after 35 years in power, there is not much that they can do to change. I don't think that there is even will. If there was will to work with everyday Ugandans, perhaps our education system would have hope. But right now, for me, the hope is regime change, and then we take over, take back, reclaim Uganda, and we change the systems for ourselves.
Okay, so we are heading for Labor Day.
Yes.
Right now, and let's say the teachers, whatever you're doing, the journalists, do you feel like we need to celebrate this day, or we are just bandwagon with other countries that are worth celebrating this day?
Labor Day is an important day for those of us who are laborers, those of us who are employees, those of us who are employers, anybody who works. Labor Day is an important day, and we must never allow anybody to take what is ours away from us. It's a moment when laborers celebrate. I think abantu abalina emirimu tugyeyagalizeemu kubanga bannaffe bangi tebalina. There are very many young people abatalina mirimu.
Ate obuzibu n'okugyeyagaliramu abasinga tebagyeyagaliramu.
Bw'oba toyina mulimu, ennaku ekubeerako, ng'okeera ku matano obeera mu kikunta, ng'okeera ku matano oleta sente z'akameeza, batalese sente z'akameeza temujja kulya. Okay? Nti bw'oba toyina mulimu, waliwo ekiba kikubulako. N'olwekyo bw'oba olina omulimu, ne bwe guba mubi gutya, gweyagaliremu kubanga eriyo banna bangi abatalina naddala omulembe gwammwe. Very many youths in Uganda are unemployed. Part of the disgruntlement that we have in the country is about unemployment. People have qualifications and no jobs. And because there are very many others who can do the job that you do, our employers think we are disposable. Tebatubalamu magezi. Many do not uphold the Employment Act and the labor rights that we are given as employees, as laborers, right? So olunaku lwaffe, it's our day. Olunaku lw'abakozi lukulu kubanga ensonga zaffe ng'ebizibu bye tulina ng'abakozi. Our challenges as laborers, as employees, have one day in the calendar to be in the spotlight, to be discussed. Part of the problem in Uganda is we don't have labor unions. Ebibiina ebigatta abakozi. Lwaki tetulina labor unions? Yoweri Museveni is scared of any formation, any groupings that are outside his purview of control. So labor unions have a history of disrupting, especially in the independence struggles around Africa and Latin America and Asia. Labor unions and labor movements were important for fighting against colonial oppressors. And so many dictators are fearful of labor unions. But labor unions are important because there are issues we have to discuss as laborers, as employees. And sometimes we cannot organize in the presence of our employers because of the bottlenecks around challenging power. But labor unions allow us to report these issues, and they allow us to consult each other and to come with group solutions from the labor movement, right? So part of the problem as well is having labor or workers, members of parliament, who are not in touch with the realities of Ugandans. Okay? Tulina ba MP abakiikirira abakozi. Biki bye batukoledde? Olaba ne minimum wage. The minimum wage bill has never been passed in parliament. Right? And so ba MP tebatugasiza mu nsonga eyo. Kyova olaba nti very many Ugandans would rather get visas, leave the country. Abakyala baffe tubalaba Dubai, abo bakadaama abamu batuvumira ku social media, naye abasinga bagenda bakola emirimu emikakkali, bakola ku busente butini, bakola ate abalala batugamba babatulugunya, babateeka ne ku mbwa ne zibakozesa, babateeka mu kutunda emibiri gyabwe, babakuba empiso z'enjaga, empiso ezibakozesa ebintu bibatandikukozesa singa tebalina ddagala lino mu mibiri gyabwe. Bali mu buddu, bakozesebwa mu mbeera ez'obuddu. Rachi, because people look at Uganda and the environment around labor laws and labor rights and employment and employability, and they would rather leave the country. Okay? So there are very many issues for us as women. There are so many glass ceilings at our places of work. In fact, the first time I appear as an activist on the world scene was when I staged my beautiful nude protest. I took off my clothes at Makerere University and I told my employer, F you! Right? Why? Because my issues were around labor right violations. Right? I was pushed to the point of choosing my nude protest because it just needed one person. I didn't need to organize other women to protest with me. Although very many other women were in my position. A woman such as myself, I came back from UK with my PhD, got a job without sleeping with any man at the university as a research fellow. A man comes out of nowhere and he's changing the terms of my employment without negotiating with me. He's giving me a second job as a lecturer, which I'm not employed to do, right? And out of the blue, people who should be protecting my labor rights as a research fellow sided with this old man. And they say to me, Stella Nyanzi, you're just a woman. You're even just a young person. What are you going to do? You can't fight against an institution. For 5 years, I battled against Makerere University, asking for promotion, asking for the respect of my contract. As a public servant, my contract is with the Ministry of Public Service. I went to the Ministry of Public Service. I went to the Directorate of Human Resources. I went to everybody at Makerere University who had power. And they'd say to me, we see your issues, we see your points, but you're just a woman. He's a professor. And I said to you know what? Don't push me to the wall, because when you do, I'm not like those women who don't know their rights and who don't know how to act. And people don't understand what it means for a person to protect their profession, to protect my name. I'm a very hard worker. But when a person says I'm not working because he wants me to work based on his abusive job description, not my contract, and they say I'm lazy, I will protect my name and my reputation. So part of what I did in my nude protest was to amplify the issues at Makerere. There are so many labor right violations at Makerere University, and many times because people are younger, or they are women, or they are weaker, or they are perceived to be weaker, they're told, no. Older senior women at the university would say, just leave it. Just leave what? I'm being oppressed here. And so I celebrate my nude protest at Makerere University because I was fighting for my labor rights. I opened up the door for very many other academics at the university to bring their issues to court or to the tribunal for staff, academic staff. But also the issues of Makerere were known by the whole world. Why? Because Stella Nyanzi undressed around her labor rights. Some people think I was mentally ill. I had a mental breakdown. People will say, when you're defending your rights, people will say you're mentally ill, but fight for your right, because you know what? After 5 years of hard work, I won in court. Makerere was ordered by the High Court to pay me damages. Millions! They've never given me that money. But I think for me that it was important to win in court. I had won 3 times at appeals taken to the tribunal, the staff tribunal. And the staff tribunal each time said Stella Nyanzi was right. Promote her, give her back her office, pay back her money. And Makerere refused, right? And Makerere, my relationship with Makerere was as an employee and her employer. As a laborer, offering my labor services to an institution of government. So if the government itself can take on political fights, at one point Makerere said, Stella Nyanzi, you're instated. And then they fired me and they said, but you insulted Janet Museveni. And then Janet said, take her to Faculty of Law. And I said, but I'm not a lawyer. And the Faculty of Law said, she's not a lawyer, we don't need her. Why I'm talking about this is not to criminalize this character, but to show that actually our employers can be influenced by the politics of the day. That is how bad the governance of this country has become, right? And so again, I want to reiterate what I said, that as laborers, part of our problems stem from the misgovernment of this country. That there's a lot of political influence. Who gets jobs many times is determined not because of qualifications or experience or expertise, but who do you know? Technical know-who. Is your nose as long as mine? Is the angle similar to mine? Do you drink milk like I do? Did your father fight with my father? And I think that the nepotism in the job sector, in the employment sector, is a replica of what's happening in government, in the army, in police, in wherever. Our system is rotten. Okay? Ekyennyanja engege edudda etandika na mutwe. It begins rotting from the head. As laborers, we are protected by a very good Employment Act. Many people don't even know this law. The right to leave, annual leave, the right to sick leave, the right to maternity leave. I know places of work that don't want to employ women. Bafune mbuto. They get pregnant and they take off 9 months. They menstruate and they take off 2 days. But why should we be criminalized for what is natural? Okay? And so the glass ceiling that women face at our places of work.
But do you think it's part of the ignorance that we do not even know our own rights? So that's why we are being taken granted of.
Know your rights. I mean, know your rights. Why don't we know our rights? Know your rights. And so labor and labor unions would have been very important spaces to teach other laborers, to teach. So if we had a teachers union, I know there are unions of teachers, UNATU, Uganda National Association, something, right? There are all these, but many of them are not looking at the welfare of teachers, okay? They are looking at things like, they're not even taking care of minimum wage, for example. I mean, we had Muwasa at Makerere, which is Makerere University Association of Academic Staff, Makerere University Academic Staff Association, okay? But labor unions would have put all of us together, and maybe that'd be the places where we'd teach about labor rights. So women's rights are different from labor rights, although they're the same thing. And all these are human rights. So I think the current regime does not want laborers to know their rights, okay? Because when we know our rights, we shall agitate. Doctors and nurses in Uganda are perhaps one of the strongest professions. They have had a number of strikes over the last few years. Doctors strike, nurses strike, midwives strike. And because I think they have collectives that put them together. It would be good to see Kasita, Kampala City Traders, and Katu, Kampala Arcade Traders Unions, all these different laborers coming together and talking about their issues. Tetulina toyi, gwe gyokolera mwina toyi, tetulina mukola mutya, naffe tetulina mukola mutya, tufuna akaveera bw'omala, akaveera mukakola mutya, nga tukasuula ku kimotoka kya KCCA. If 80 employers of the arcades sat down together and they said, naffe tetulina toyi, aba mall ne bagamba ffe tulina, kati aba mall mwakola mutya okufuna toilet? Tusasula tutya emisolo ewa yura etusibidde enzigi za arcade zaffe, naye tetulina toyi, tetuddamu kusasula misolo okutuusa nga tukoze eki nga batuwadde toilet. Tukikola tutya nga tetulina bibiira byetugatta? So ebya rights, okumanya eddembe lyaffe ery'obwebange ng'abakozi ba Uganda, okumanya ebitukwatako tetusobola okureportinga, twandibadde tubikola nga tulina ebibiina ebitugatta ebyawamu, naye gavumenti teegala tumanye eddembe lyaffe lya bwebange ng'abakozi. Kubanga bwe tumanya tujja kwekalakaasa, tebaagala beekalakaasi. Era nzirayo ku mulamwa gwange, twe twagala okukyusa ebintu, tusooke tukyuse gavumenti.
Nayenga, is it possible nti everything has to be politicized?